Welcome everyone to The Edge. I'm Drew Null.
And I'm Brad Furnish.
And today we don't have any guests for you. So it's episode 10. And we decided that for episode 10, we would take a recap of our previous episodes, talk about highlights, things that we enjoyed, people we enjoyed talking to, lessons learned, things that we might do different going forward. I don't know. A bit of a recap episode. So, yeah, I don't know. So from here, Brad, I mean, what do you think? For one, I don't think either of us ever thought that we'd be hosting a podcast, for one. So that's been an experience learning, how we format things. Getting guests was a lot. I don't know if it was a lot harder than what I thought. I didn't think it would be easy going into it.
I would say on that piece of it, I don't know why we didn't think of it, but I think we've had a lot of cool guests that want to participate, but they can't because of their corporate legal structures or public speaking certifications that they have to have. And
that's true.
It's, I guess, in today's day and world with a lot of people doing podcasts, I never really thought of, people that outwardly protecting their brand of who can speak on podcasts, but
that's true.
It for sure makes sense. So I would say that aspect of it has created some hoops, but overall, like the guests that we've had, they've been super easy to work with, super awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the working with the folks that we've gotten to come on have been great. And, the thing that I've enjoyed about the way we've formatted the podcast is it's been very conversational. There's some, we and that was something we were really intentional about, at the beginning, was we didn't want it to just be a very sterile and static interview, ask you a question. Yeah, exactly. We wanted it to be a conversation. We wanted to be people talking about things that they enjoy, right?
And they're experts in. Yeah, that's the whole point is, you can think what you want about me, but I don't want to be the smartest person in the room or tell people what they have to say or what they don't like.
I don't ever have to worry about that.
No, exactly. So it's awesome because we get people who are subject matter experts in their areas and giving a conversation. And frankly, it's an education piece on my end for a lot of it too. We've had some great guests on different topics, but letting them talk about what they are interested in, what they've succeeded in. Honestly, some of their failures or learning moments, the icebreaker question has been a fun one. I think we've gotten some fun answers out of that. So the conversational piece for sure. I don't think I'm a good enough interviewer to sit there and ask questions.
Yeah, I will say that's been, especially some of the guests that we've had have been pretty high profile folks. And there was some anxiety on my part with some of that. Just, we always said from the jump, to your point, we never wanted to carry the conversation. We wanted to just facilitate a conversation with the subject matter experts and the folks that we have on. But the thought of, okay, how there is an art to, and by no means are you or I, like, professional, really good at this thing? I think some people have given us some platitudes like, "Oh, you did a great job. It's awesome." But there is a vast art and skill to conversation, and especially when you throw a camera in front of somebody or a microphone at somebody, I think, conversation that you'd normally have without it, it's something you have to work at, and,
I can talk to that because you mentioned a minute ago that neither of us thought we would ever do a podcast. Like, I can share multitudes of friends and family that if you went, "Hey, I'm going to do a podcast," they'd be like, "Ha, funny joke." Like, no way. Like, the type of person you aren't going to get on a podcast and just openly talk. Like, I've historically a pretty introverted person when I can be, and like to keep to myself, but I like having outward conversations. I like learning things, but putting a microphone and a camera in my face was never on the roadmap of things I thought I would do for sure. So with that, any suggestions for anybody listening or watching of, hey, ask that question, stop asking that question, those type of things, I'm all ears because it'll be fun.
Yeah,
we're trying to get the most out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a solid note to, because we're not doing this for ourselves, right? I enjoy it, right? But in terms of, we're doing this for people to learn. We said from the jump we wanted this to be a learning experience for folks. That it would be a thought leadership thing where people can come and learn about stuff that they may have interest in or not even thought of. If there's suggestions on topics that you'd like to have us talk to folks about, or people, guests for that matter, that we're all ears for that.
Yeah, and if you have special connections to those people and get us hooked up to those too, by all means. That's some of the folks that we've had on guests, like we know personally. Some of them have been through mutual contacts, mutual friends, and some of those have been the best conversations.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
It's also a fun perspective because we get to learn right along with the listeners that are listening and watching to the podcast too. So
yeah, for sure. I think some of the, I've learned more in some of the research for the podcast, leading up to, some of those folks, especially. I think for me, one of the most, one of the guests that I learned the most from, not only the interview or the conversation we had with him, but the research leading up to it, was Scott McNealy. That was definitely one of those that I was anxious, nervous going into, just because of
he's a
who he is.
Guy,
Exactly. And so I did a lot of research on Scott and what he's doing, what he's done. I knew about Sun Microsystems. I'd heard about him, but I didn't really know all of that. I think most people know Sun. If you're not in the industry, know Sun Microsystems from either their founding or their interaction in the monopoly lawsuit with Microsoft, and you'd maybe heard the name at least, or the acquisition. Yeah, exactly. But definitely learned a lot in just researching Scott and who he is, what he's done, and then there's a wealth of knowledge in that podcast, in terms of life in general, and I love his perspective on education and what he's doing there. The whole Curriki thing is pretty remarkable, and they just that was really cool too, because I remember us talking to him about it, and that was real early on in the pandemic, right? Like that was March, I think, was when we interviewed him, and he was talking about how they were close to a launch of Curriki and all this stuff, and then it was kind of cool to then was it late July, early August? Then I started seeing Curriki pop up on LinkedIn and that they were launching and all this stuff. So that was kind of cool to be able to make that connection, say, oh yeah, I remember talking to Scott about that, and then actually seeing it happen. And they've gotten a lot of really good traction in what they're doing with Curriki. So that was really cool.
In addition, I know that with Curriki, he has the foundation with his son. His son actually, post pandemic, actually had a really good season. So it's going to be fun to see that, and it's always fun when you have people who are matching dollar for dollar to help those types of systems. But I think his perspective was awesome. The way that he approaches it, obviously he's done a million interviews, and doing a podcast with us probably pretty low on his list of like cool things in his life, which I expected to be, but he was awesome to work with, and super relaxed, which I think helped with that, because if you also remember a little behind the scenes for episode 10, like we had super technical difficulties with that.
We did. Well, that was the first time. Well, you're right, because he called me. Well, we sent him a pack, like a tech pack, and
there were some issues getting that. Like the tech pack didn't quite work. We also learned in that one that my laptop hates Zoom, so I have to get on with a tablet, even though it's sitting right next to each other. And so, like, we had to start and stop that a few different times.
We did.
Also, like,
you had to get off,
audio
and
cut
get back
off
on.
in one side. Like, so I mean, kudos to him for
he
not
powered
being
through
like,
with his, like,
hey, you guys are idiots. Like,
he was totally cool about that.
He was cool about that. And I mean, that's awesome. And then, some of the other guests we've had, I know that, I'd say from my perspective, one of the most fascinating ones was recent with Adam.
And that was pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy, and hearing about the things that he's doing, and some of those things. But I really think a lot of the guests added a whole bunch to it. Like we have some folks who are really into gaming in our company. And they really are. And I played games, but I am by no means a gaming esports person. So talking to Nashua was very eye-opening, enlightening for me, but then also the development of the stuff that he's working on in A3, and the gamification and education and some of those pieces that you realize but you don't realize,
well, and Mark is such a bridge in that space, I feel like, and I think that was why that was a really interesting conversation, because I mean, you can get somebody that's just a hardcore gamer, right? And that's just esports, 100% all in, full throttle. And in that respect, Mark is. But Mark's also an educator, I mean, being at the Guild Hall at SMU and all that. And so Mark sees the he sees that lane in between the two, right? And how one enhances the other. And so that I think one, it positions Mark really well in that space, but it made for a fascinating conversation because to your point, like we talked about gaming and we talked about game development, his time at Sony and all that stuff, but then a lot of that, and that was, I think, our longest episode, actually. That was almost 2 hours. And we spent probably more time on education than we did on gaming and esports. And so that was really cool. And his insight in how that's innovating the education space. And COVID has accelerated all that and put that in a lens where you have to think about alternative education platforms and gaming. And really it's the platform of gaming that propels them into some of that stuff, right?
That, and it's one of those two where, obviously I did your traditional in school, in the classroom as university, but I also finished up, as an online piece. And, in that episode, like it hits home because I can talk to, here's what's great about online learning for me. Here's what sucked about online learning for me. And, I am by no means the only person who's done online learning, and I'm not the only personality in the world. So, the fact that he can talk about, how do you make it great for everybody, or how do you include some of those gaming components to make it great for everybody, but then also, talking about, the morality behind, making the games to where people want to play them, but not to the point where, you have that addiction cycle, to it. So, to me, that was fascinating because it's a space that, I've played different sports games. I tend to, go to sports games, which shocker based on my background, but at the same time, I've played Halo, I've played Call of Duty. I haven't gotten into a lot of those, or I hadn't gotten into a lot of those. And just hearing about that world, like I am by no means going to sit there and go, oh, that just doesn't exist. And like, it was just fascinating because it's a subject that I wasn't well versed on, and being able to hear from somebody who has been on every side of the fence in that, and now taking those components and pushing outwards was fascinating. But, we can go data center world too, we've had some of those, or we've had, AI machine learning, or, robots in manufacturing. Like there's so many different topics where we go, oh yeah, that's cool. And like you register that they're there, like we've all seen the car commercials of assembly line with a robot putting a hood on a car. Right. But to actually, with Chet's go into, hey, here's what actually goes into that.
Here's all the back end stuff.
Here's all the back end that has to happen, and how, from a technology compute perspective, how intensive that actually is. Right. Then to turn it into dollars and cents and cost savings and projecting that out, we can go on and on for a while.
Well, and I think a common thread there's a few common threads with all of our conversations and how the podcast is, I don't know, evolved, but just the folks that we've had. It's that everybody that we've talked to, and I think this, I don't know, would be an interesting thought exercise, but technology has always, my head's, all of our folks have always had that thought of, this is what I know, this is what I do, but everybody we've talked to has had that forward thinking piece to them, right? And that could be just because we talk to really cool people that are forward thinkers, or, and I think that's a lot of it, right? But it's interesting to see how everybody that we've talked to obviously has some tie to technology, and we always, say that and talk about how what we're doing is an enabling evolutionary platform, right? And so it's very cool to see how other people are thinking and innovating in their space. And the long, we've done 9 episodes, right? So it's not like we have this long catalog, but it's cool to see how some of those things, some of the stuff that like we talked about with Chet and, manufacturing automation tied into like our conversation with Jeff DeCou and AI and automation and all that, or how the stuff that Scott's doing at Curriki is tying into the gamification stuff that Nashua was talking, there's all these crazy connections. And that's been one of the really exciting things for me, is to see how all that stuff plays together. And it's that hope and thought that if we continue to think that, I don't know, and this is getting way more philosophical than we probably wanted to, but it's the two of us, so whatever. Like I think as a human, you're constantly looking for hope, right? And especially,
well, given the time that we started,
yeah, exactly,
then, to go down that philosophical path. I mean, if you really look at it, everybody we talk to, most of them they're at various levels of being subject matter experts in their specific area.
Yeah.
Starting with Haynes, he's a broker. He knows the industry, to Scott McNealy, to then back to, Bill Picard. Like
right.
They all have their different areas of expertise, but they've all seen change.
Yeah.
But they all are very, very passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, I feel that all of them have that, yes, there's hope, and yes, here's the future, but there's that passion behind it that makes them go, ooh, what can we do to make this a little bit better?
Exactly.
How's this going to get better? And, obviously, Scott McNealy's been around for a while and done a whole bunch of amazing things. So he added some great perspective on that, and, touched on just some different global type ideas from just how education's rolling of, should you go directly from high school to college, or is, college back to everybody, which, we could get into the whole debate of trade schools and all that stuff, but I don't think we want to do that here. And don't want to spend time going down that, because there's arguments on both sides of that,
sure,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's everybody, to your point, like, given where we are with the pandemic, or were with the pandemic, still kind of are with the pandemic, like, everybody wants something to leash onto, but technology's not stopping.
Right.
And I guess that's the other component to it is everybody that we've talked to, they use technology to enable everything, but they have to use technology, number one, for their business. Sure. But number two, the more that technology improves, the easier it is for them to do their job.
Yeah.
And the more that it gets spread out, the more connected people are. The more connected people are, the more data that you have, the more information that you have to make these decisions. Like, it's all a nice, great circle that everybody's looking to do it. But I don't think all the guests that we've had seem to me to be looking to do it in a way to benefit everybody or a section of people in the world.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And so like, there is that, that piece to it where it's, not the true greater good, if you will, but it's not just, hey, I'm going to learn this. I want to know this. I'm a subject matter expert, so I can be better than you. I didn't get that sense from any of the people that we talked to.
Yeah,
It's all with the support of, how do we make life easier? Like, how do we make driving safer? If it's autonomous driving cars with Jeff Taku, like, how do we do that? Is it true 5G to increase connectivity? Is it, everybody wants to talk about, e-medicine, but how do we pull that off? Which, from a forward thinking guest perspective, I think it'd be cool to have, a technology person in healthcare industry who can speak a little bit more to that.
Absolutely.
Don't I have any idea where we would find that person. So, that's if something that we can go through, but there's some cool topics. And, I think we also, in my opinion, we can try to get into some topics of, a lot of our stuff has been focused in the U.S. or, there's been a few that have gone outside of the U.S., but like, how is technology different, across the globe? Like, because, we all are used to the bubble that we live in the United States, right? And I would assume most of our listeners are in the United States. We have a few that are for outside of it, but we all use similar technologies, but the way that we have to use them are different. So I think it'd be curious there, but then, I think we'd be remiss if, we don't mention, the fact that we as a company got selected for AFWorks, which includes projecting stuff out into space.
Sure.
So, that's something that if you would ask me planning for the podcast before our first one, if we had ever considered talking about technology in space, I wouldn't have thought we would gotten there.
Right.
But that's here we are. And those are some fun things. And
Yeah, no, I think it's crazy, man. And that's the I don't know, to your point too, thinking about, being that we are, the sales team here, and like, that's where our mind is in a lot of ways. And I know we've gone about it in a non-traditional way, right? Purposefully.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, thinking about what could we do, what could, like that, for me mentally, and we've talked about it at length, but the whole the COVID thing, right? Like, not to circle back hard on that wagon, but it as we've been forced into utilizing technology, people that never would have, like, my mother, having to, working in a school, having to get on and do that kind of stuff. Like we've talked about that. I think we talked about that with Haynes, and we've talked in a few different places, right? Where, teachers that never, like that they struggle to, use their internet browser to do grade books and stuff like that. Now they're having to manage, an entire 6-7 hours of Zoom calls and stuff like that. But it's and so you could look at that and go, oh, that's negative, like crap, people are having to get outside their comfort zone. But as a society, like it's pushing us into places that we hadn't thought of, or we had thought about it. It wasn't as ubiquitous, and it's becoming more so. And, like that's how, for me personally, how I've had to frame this whole thing is it's like, negative things. I think we can all agree that a pandemic is a negative thing.
Yep, absolutely.
Sometimes spurs on positivity and positive development and innovation, and I think it's funny that I say that, and then tongue in cheek, we have some high schoolers that live next door to us, and they're like, dude, we're never going to have another snow day. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, if it snows, we can't go to school. They know how to have school at home. And I was like, okay, there's some truth to that, maybe.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But I also think and obviously the pandemic's very negative.
Yeah.
And, I think we all have to hope for, or find that sliver of hope or that silver lining. But also I think the pandemic has called out some gaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where
for sure.
technology can be used to enhance the experience, but it's called out some gaps where we aren't utilizing technology to get people set up and have people there. And we've gone about this very deliberately to not be a TMGCore sales session.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
That's not what this is for. I don't think that's really in our personalities to go that way. But we've been part of some conversations where, we're talking about school districts putting Wi-Fi routers on buses to get Wi-Fi to the community. And that is something I would have never thought of. Like we all know that there's kids and families out in the middle of anywhere, away from very metropolis, metroplex cities like we're in here. But, you can go 3 hours outside of a major city, or you go to the North or Midwest or the Northwest, you have people who are spread out and not even going to think about of how is connectivity getting there, and I don't know, but it's also one of those things where you can't have class in a classroom. So we have to figure out, well, you're now talking about, kids and families who don't have access to technology. And we lose sight of that a lot because, for us, technology is so ingrained into what we do that, we have people figuring out how to, turn their watch into their wallet and never have to carry a wallet around, or turn their watch into their phone and their wallet, and that's the cool things that technology can combine with to talk about now. There were some school districts left scrambling of how do we get devices to every kid just so they can do it, or how do we connect all these kids? And, it's cool to see different corporations and companies step up to offer, free platforms for a while so we can all continue to move on because, long range thinking, and, I like to go down that rabbit hole a lot, but long range thinking, like, if we weren't able to do that, or if we didn't have some of those companies step up to do that, like in reality, like there could have been a massive gap in education, that's a year plus gap of school just halting. So, what does that do to the workforce? What does that do to the economy? Like, what does that do to innovation?
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's right.
And that's the interesting piece to me, which is cool to see how technology has enabled a lot of those things. And, I hope, big word there, coming out of, the pandemic, and obviously the folks that we're talking to are trying to help and do things that help within the middle of the pandemic, is we can figure out a way to make it easier for access to technology because, there's a lot of smart people in the world that, if they get access to the right things, it's cool.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, to put a bow on, I mean, the human condition is resilient. Yeah. You know, like we, as a condition, as a society, we've always, you know, we've always rebounded. We figure it out, we move through, we move on, and usually come out better on the other end of it. And I have full faith that we will here. And so that's, you know, I don't even know how we got down that rabbit hole and road, but, you know, other than to say, you know,
that's the fun part of making this a conversation.
Exactly right. But you know, technology, to your point, I think that's how we got off on it, was that's innovating and that's enabling that resiliency. And to your point, I think that moving forward, technology is just going to continue to enable that. Not to say we won't ever have another pandemic. We may, hopefully not, you know, who knows, but I think we absolutely will be more prepared because of it. And it's created a need for innovation, right? There have been innovations that people didn't think about, you know, as a result of it. And that's opened up some spaces for people to move into from an innovation standpoint.
I think that, to tie up, I think every guest that we've talked to has brought that into, you know, how technology can be innovated to enable. Yeah, I think that's the ultimate theme. Yeah. And I don't think that was the intentional theme. You know, when we started,
it fleshed us out that way.
You know, we just wanted thought leadership and people to teach us, and, you know, stuff that we thought would be cool if we were driving down the road listening to a podcast. Right. Like, what's something that'd be interested in learning about for 30 minutes to an hour, 2 hours, whatever that is. Yeah. I guess on that note too, I mean, we probably need to ask for feedback on the timing, you know, on is the form factor.
How long have we been going?
Yeah, the good. Well, I mean, it's, you know, what do people want to consume? And, you know, obviously, you know, I would say that we've been pleasantly surprised about the number of folks who have consumed our podcast on a regular basis. We've had people reach out to us and give us comments and feedback, and it's much appreciated, even if it's telling me I look like a yahoo half the time. That's fine too.
Hey, if it's only half the time, that's not bad.
Or, you know, like, I'm the one who asked the tough questions. I don't know
how you got the hard hitter label.
It's just the face.
Maybe.
It's the way I deliver questions.
Fair enough.
There's no empathy in the way I deliver questions.
Yeah. I've never been known as an empathetic one, but that's all right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to what people want to know, if they want, you know, 15, 30-minute segments, if they're good with the hour segments, if they want us to push it out the longer or have the same guest and break it into short form. Like, I'm curious, because
same here.
You know, like, I sit there and watch ours, you know, sometimes, you know, well, actually I know this, like, I look at ours and, like, I hear some of the things that come out of my mouth and it's nails on a chalkboard, you know, but, like, I've enjoyed.
You're not the one that edits it. I listen to it and go, crap, I didn't catch that door shutting in the background or something.
I'm looking at, like, the way that you go about it, like, the questions you ask, the statements that are made, the stories that, you know, our guests say. I'm all like, man, this is all good stuff. And then I start talking. Like, that's how I feel about it.
We're our own worst critic.
Exactly. And so, like, but that's where I'm opening myself up to that feedback. And I think we are collectively
for sure.
You know, what do people want? Because, you know, if people want a 20-minute podcast, then cool. We can stick it to a couple questions and make it a little bit more, you know, quick and firm. But then we might be able to have a guest on multiple times. I don't know what that is.
Or go long and chop it up. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it. But I'm with you. I think if there's feedback, I mean, if ever there was an episode to leave comments on, it's this one.
Although, if you want new hosts, I don't know if that's going to be an option.
I'm sure there are plenty of people around here that would jump in front of a camera.
I don't know about that.
Yeah,
we've asked some internal folks to get on the camera, and
that's true. Whatever.
I know.
Cool. Well, all right. So that's going to do it for us here today on The Edge, a TMGCore production. Don't forget to go check us out on YouTube, like our channel, subscribe, sign up for notifications there. You can also check us out at www.theedgetmgcore.com and anywhere you catch your podcast. So until next time, we'll see you and take care.